This video is going to be an overview of Di2, and I'm going to be looking at Shimano Ultegra Di2. And the reason I wanted to do this video is I recently was in the market for a new cyclocross bike and ended up going with Di2, but in the decision-making process I was looking at information out there on Di2, and really from a newbie standpoint didn't find a lot that told me kind of the intricacies of how it worked and how you built it. So I just wanted to do a quick video that talks about it, and I'll probably in a few months follow this up with a full review of my opinions of Shimano Di2. Let me start with the levers, and again, as I do this, I'm going to target this video for someone who has no idea what Di2 is, to kind of help you guys out to learn about this and help you make a decision if you want to go with this. Now, I went with hydraulic disc brakes since this is a cyclocross bike, so these levers are hydraulic, and of course the Di2. Shimano has designed the paddles, the shift paddles, to be just like the mechanicals. So on the right side, the inside panel is going to drop the derailleur down to a higher gear or smaller cog. The lever does not move over, so the lever remains stiff, but the paddle on this side is where your fingers would be on a mechanical. So you would tap this lever to move the derailleur, the rear derailleur, up to a larger cog or a smaller gear. Pushing the buttons is not as hard as actually moving a lever, but Shimano has designed these so that you do have to push on them. So you're not going to accidentally tap the lever while you're out of the saddle sprinting, for example, and accidentally shift. So you've got to actually push on it, but it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. And the same is with the front derailleur. So again, the buttons are as they would be on a mechanical. So you would tap the inside paddle to drop the front derailleur down to the smaller ring or lower gear. And like I said, on the right side, on the left side is the same. It's got the paddle on the outside, kind of where your fingers would be on the mechanicals, to shift the front derailleur into the larger cog, or larger chainring, I should say. So you've got one cable coming out for the shifting, and it goes into this junction box that you actually strap on the bike, and most people will strap it underneath the stem. And you'll see that there are 3 cables going into this junction box coming out the front. And what's nice is it doesn't matter where they plug into. Obviously it's cleaner if you put the rear or the right cable going into the right side and the left into the left side. The cable in the middle here is the one cable that comes out of the junction box and goes down to another junction box that is most likely going to be inside the frame. So in this bike, you've got one cable running inside the frame. It's a thinner cable than a normal derailleur cable, and again, it's only one, so you don't have 2 cables running down. And you can't see it, but inside the frame is another junction box that has 2 holes on each side, and I would say it's probably about that big. And like the front junction box up here, it doesn't matter where the cables are plugged into. So you've got, again, 4 holes. The first hole is where this cable plugs into. The second hole you would plug in your front derailleur cable, and the third hole you would plug in the rear derailleur cable. Again, these all run inside the frame up to this junction box, and you tuck it kind of anywhere you can inside the frame. And the fourth cable would be the battery. This is the newer style Di2, and this one came with a seat post battery. So inside the seat post is a battery that's about this big, and it's you got these shims that will hold it inside the seat post, and then there's a cable running out that again comes down the seat tube into this junction box that's inside the frame. And of course, since it has a battery, you have to charge it. And the way that you would do that is at this front junction box on the left side, there's a little cover, and you would just pop this out, and it comes with a charger, and you would plug the charger into there, And the other end of the charger is a USB, so you can plug it into a computer or a plug adapter like from a phone, and it takes a couple hours to charge up. And the charger does have lights on it to let you know when it's fully charged. And from what I hear from people who use Di2 is you'll get about 2 or 3 months before you have to recharge. I've only put in a few rides on this bike, so I haven't used it very long. But it does last quite a while between charges. And you can check the status of the battery by holding down one of the paddles for about a second. So if I do that, it's also going to shift quickly, but I can hold that down and you'll get a light. So a green light means that the battery is good. And I had mentioned holding down the paddles. So if you do this, it's going to continually shift. So if I wanted to shift into several gears lower or larger cogs in the back, I could just hold down this paddle and it's going to keep shifting until I let go. So that's a really nice feature about the Di2. The screws on the derailleurs are just like the mechanicals in that you have a high and a low screw. So there are your screws on the rear derailleur, and on the front derailleur you've got your low screw up here and your high screw down here. So again, you're going to adjust these just like you would a mechanical. Once you have your set screws in place, then you've got to do your fine-tuning adjustment to the equivalent of turning the barrel adjusters on a mechanical. The way that you do this on Di2 is it's got a little button underneath the junction box, and you would hold that button down for about 2 seconds, and that's going to take it into adjusting mode, and you'll see that you get a red light that comes on. Once it's in adjusting mode, when you tap the paddles, it's going to do very small adjustments on both the rear and the front derailleur. That's the way you would fine-tune it to get the chain perfectly lined up on either the cogs or the chain rings. And what's nice about that is you can actually do that when you're riding. So if you feel like your rear derailleur is not adjusted properly, you can hold down that button, do your fine-tuning adjustments, and then when you're done, all you do is you hold down the button for about another second, and the light goes off and you're back in your standard mode. The cables on Di2 are thinner than a standard mechanical cable, and they're also lighter since you don't have an outer casing and an inner wire. Now, to get these inside, you could press these in with your hand, but Shimano makes a little plastic tool that's used to kind of grip this and push it inside. So you're pushing inside the rear derailleur, you're pushing it inside the front derailleur, and then if you're building it up yourselves, you're pushing it inside each of the junction boxes and the levers. So I would highly recommend using that tool because you don't want to bend this. And the tool also has another end to kind of pry it out if you have to remove it. Now, I'm not sure of the exact weight specs of Di2 compared to mechanical. The front derailleur and rear derailleur did feel heavier to me than a standard mechanical. So, you know, like I said, the cables are lighter, and I think net weight savings would probably be maybe a tad heavier on Di2, but I don't have the technical specs in front of me. Since these are hydraulic, I'll end this video by just describing how the hydraulic works on these. And I have a video on how to bleed these for setup, but what you would do is remove this cover, and then you've got a bleed port in the top, and if you're familiar with mountain bike brakes, it's going to work the same way. In fact, the calipers look really similar to the mountain bike brakes. What's different from the mountain bike brakes is that you actually have a split in the cable. And I think that Shimano has done this for a few reasons. One is you can, if you had to do work on the brakes, you could undo this cable without having to unwrap your bar tape. Also, if you wanted to swap the levers and run them what's called moto style, is you could swap the left and the right really easily. So that's going to wrap up my overview of Shimano Di2. And like I said, I wanted to do this to just kind of introduce this to some of you all out there who don't understand Di2 and were like me a few months ago, just not knowing what I was getting into or how it worked. So hope this was helpful for you, and I will follow this up most likely with a in-depth review of Di2 and its performance and that kind of thing after I've put in some rides and races on it. Thanks for watching.